The first phase is to feed our sourdough starter. I feed mine in the morning around 8 or 9 a.m. and I take my starter right out of the fridge. I don't even give it time to warm up and I just feed it straight away. So I measure out 100 grams of sourdough starter. Then I add about 90 to 100 grams of water. And I like to add the water first so that I can stir it up. It just helps create a better consistency when I add the flour next. And then I add 100 grams of bread flour. And then I stir it all together until everything is combined. It usually ends up having a pretty clumpy and thick consistency. I cover my starter with parchment paper and the ring from the jar lid, and I leave it on the counter in a semi-warm place. I like to use a rubber band or an expo marker to show where the starter began, and then when it grows and doubles in size, I know that it's ready to be used in my dough. And then I leave it on the counter for about 6 to 8 hours or until it's doubled in size. Once your starter has doubled in size, you're ready to make your bread dough. So in a large bowl, measure out 500 grams of flour and 10 grams of salt. In another bowl or a measuring cup, measure out 350 grams of water and add 100 grams of your sourdough starter to the water and mix it up until it's fully combined. Slowly pour your water and starter mixture into the dry ingredients and mix until everything is combined. It should look like a shaggy ball of dough, and then you want to cover it with a damp cloth and let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes before you start your first stretch and fold series. So this is how you stretch and fold the dough. I do it about 4 to 6 times around. After the first stretch and fold series, cover it back up and wait another 15 to 20 minutes before repeating that process one more time. Then you're going to cover with a damp cloth and leave it on your counter overnight for about 10 hours. I wanted to quickly mention that once you use your sourdough starter for your dough, you want to then feed that starter again so that you have more for the next time you bake or to go in the fridge. Then in the morning, after the 10 hours have passed, preheat your oven to 450 with your Dutch oven inside with the lid on, and let it preheat for 1 whole hour. While the oven is preheating for that hour, you're going to perform your last set of stretch and folds. This one looks a little bit different than the first stretch and fold the night before. So get your hands wet and start pulling the dough away from the bowl on the sides, and then pull up the dough from the middle and let it stretch about half a foot to a foot before letting it fold over itself. You're going to do this 3 times before transferring this into another bowl lined with parchment paper. Sprinkle the top of the dough with bread flour, or my favorite is rice flour, and then put it uncovered in the fridge for the rest of the hour while the oven is preheating. Then you're going to score your bread. There's a ton of designs if you Google sourdough scoring techniques or sourdough scoring patterns, and I love to try a different pattern every single time, with at least one of my scores going deeper and then the design itself being a little bit less deep. Once the oven is preheated, remove the lid from the Dutch oven and transfer the parchment-lined dough into the Dutch oven, and then cover it with the parchment paper sides sticking out. And then you're going to bake it on 450 for 25 minutes. And then you're going to lower the heat to 425 and bake it uncovered without the lid for another 15 minutes or until it's crispy brown. And then you'll have a perfect loaf of sourdough bread. You want to let it cool before you slice into it, but it is such a simple recipe once you get it down, and you can time it right so that the sourdough schedule fits into your schedule and not the other way around. Making sourdough is definitely a process, and it can be really overwhelming at first, but once you get it down, it's like second nature and it'll be so worth it. So good luck with your first sourdough loaf. You've got this.